She writes, Los Angeles, founded by Mexican settlers in 1781. That's incredible. None of that is true.
Basically, they're trying to say, like, we're anti-immigration. So why would you behave like this?
We're talking about a world in which LA is so violent that the Waymos have to straight up leave. Or aren't we going to have to arm the Waymos at some point?
I'm moving to Asia. I don't know. I think this is all cooked.
Man.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the pod. We have the legendary Liv Boeree back with us today. It is always a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Just saw Liv and George Hotz at an event for Founders Fund called Symposium, and it's just so fun talking to both of you. I'm glad you're here. Clearly, we're talking about the LA riots. Let's just get into it, man. The LA riots. Riley, take it away.
Yeah, it's one of LA's favorite pastimes as a good old-fashioned riot, and that's exactly what broke out over several days this past week in downtown Los Angeles. Although the definition of riot was hotly debated over on Wikipedia, as Ashley covered for us in a recent piece this week. But this all started after ICE raids ramped up in the city under what the law enforcement agency called a targeted enforcement operation, basically going into illegal immigrants' places of work, literally targeted a Home Depot parking lot, and apparently arrested over 100 illegal immigrants in a single day. Anti-ICE protests broke out shortly after that, and once some of the images and videos of these protests started to go viral, Donald Trump called for the deployment of up to 4,000 National Guard troops and more recently dispatched approximately 700 Marines as well. This was the first time since 1965 that National Guard troops have been federalized without a governor's request, the last time being during civil rights protests in Selma, Alabama. And the reason this incident went against a governor's wishes is because Gavin Newsom and other California leaders called the move inflammatory. Newsom said on Saturday, quote, "The federal government is taking over the California National Guard and deploying 2,000 soldiers in Los Angeles, not because there's a shortage of law enforcement, but because they want a spectacle." I went down there on Monday and got to see some of that spectacle myself. Blake interviewed one of the independent journalists who's been covering things on the ground. Some of the highlights have included people on dirt bikes waving Mexican flags around a burning car, like some kind of Mad Max merry-go-round situation. Of course, burning Waymos, which we will get into later. Looting stores, including a local sushi restaurant. Some dude seizing his 15 minutes of fame and delivering an absolutely Oscar-worthy speech to some police officer, which maybe we can play a clip of.
Think about what you're doing now. Think about what this means. Coming into our community. Peaceful fucking community. People working their jobs. They send in men in military fatigues. Weapons of war into our communities. And you stand here and you allow it. I am sick and tired of it.
And as the protests have started to spread to other cities, there was also another viral moment in New York where a couple seems entirely unbothered that they're like blocking this woman's commute to work.
How do you all as white people feel about stopping a black woman from going to work?
Oh no, not work. I can't.
But like I mentioned, these protests have been spreading to other cities now. This is sort of becoming a national thing at this point. I will stop my rambling and let you guys share your thoughts on some of these anti-ICE protests.
I do have a question for Liv immediately, which is, as a native Brit, could you ever imagine yourself lighting something on fire in America and waving the Union Jack around?
Do you know how hard I fucking worked for my green card? It's taken years and so much money. I am the most model citizen I could be because, not only out of fear of something reprisal, but I'm just like, great. If I've chosen to go and live in a country, then in my opinion, I've chosen to like respect its laws and its society. So no, I could not imagine doing it. That said, I mean, I have some sympathy for the idea of civil disobedience. Like that is sometimes necessary. Governments do whack shit. And there needs to be some way for the people to get their voices heard. Does it mean destroying a fleet of little autonomous vehicles? Absolutely not. yeah, it's. I just don't understand. The thing I truly don't understand is why would you go and wave the flag of the country that you left if you're trying to fight for fight against the idea. There's basically they're trying to say like we're anti-immigration. So why would you behave like this?
Right on that ground floor, it's like, who are these people? Who are we looking at? It's hard to tell. We have all these viral images on social media and clips, and even the people who are the journalists who were there they're not interviewing everybody. It's a crazy mob that's kind of gone mad. So are they Mexican immigrants? I think probably some of them. Are they Mexican, like sort of descended of Mexican immigrants? I think probably some of them. Are they just crazy white people? Definitely some of them. I definitely saw a couple of those. Are they professional agitators? Are they just kind of out there for what looked like at one point a kind of very violent barbecue sort of atmosphere? There was a moment when I think a corner store was looted. Blake had in your interview, the guy described this moment where everyone was walking around with like a Michelob or something that they had stolen. And it's like, I don't know what that is even at that point. I know what it was supposed to be and what it was represented as, which was this fight for Mexicans. But yeah, the messaging was super confused, which has made this kind of hard to wrap, to sort of wrap my head around. And I still, at this point, don't quite know what they are. So, like, is it civil disobedience? Like, what are they protesting at this point? And then that brings me to my next question, which is like, if I wanted to actually really give them the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, this is a principled protest and they have a reason they're mad and they kind of represent one thing, it would have to just be something like they're mad about deportation, generally speaking, just generally deportation, not just the Abrego thing where it's like this guy's being deported and he shouldn't have been, but straight up these people are being deported and they should be, but I'm against the concept of deporting people who got here illegally. And so then at that point I'm like, well, I don't agree with that. But we're already sort of like 3 levels in where I'm like, I don't actually fully know what we're talking about. I know what I think about these issues, but I don't know what they even represent. George, what have you made of it all, if anything?
I don't trust the news. I think it's all fake. I think just how do we know there's anyone even there? It's all just deep fakes. What are they trying to manipulate you to believe, right? Like, I just, every time I see something, I'm just like, is this happening? Did anyone here see it? Did anyone here see it with their own eyes? And are you sure someone didn't shove a VR headset on you? I think it's all fake. It's a TV show, it's good. I mean, are you sure that what you saw wasn't actors using the filter method? It's just impossible for me to engage with any of this stuff on the surface level. I think that it's all, again, like whatever you're being fed, the algorithms are so much more intelligent than any single one of us. So they're designing to manipulate you to believe something or to feel something, and the question is what? Right? It's not, forget the surface level event, right? Forget the airborne toxic event. It doesn't even matter what it is. The question is just, why are they doing it? Right? Like, it's all just such nonsense.
Riley.
I do think.
Blake.
Can I say something really quick? I do think, to George's point, it's really tough to make sense of all the activity. But based on our reporting and interviews and doing like really deep dives on the internet to find raw footage, I think part of what's confusing is there's not just one monolithic group. It seemed like in LA, there were legitimate protests, lots of people marching. They were not only upset about the immigration raids, but the way that they were carried out. Like some people were arrested at immigration offices, courthouses, and ICE field offices. So these are people that might have court dates for asylum hearings and things like that. And then they're being deported quickly without due process as we might typically understand it. I feel like there were protests on those grounds. And then there was a bunch of chaos and people looking to have fun and cause mayhem and take really cool pictures standing on top of cars. We did sort of a deep dive on why exactly people lit the Waymos on fire. There was a lot of opinions about that in the kind of internet ecosystem. Oh, they did it because of big tech, or oh, they did it because big tech is in bed with Trump, which is debatable. And in reality, like from what I could find, the people engaging the most with the fires were doing it to take really cool TikTok videos and get a lot of likes and clicks and clout. And there was even competitive dynamics between people trying to take photos. And then that, to George's point, goes out into this ether where how we make sense of that is fractured very much along political lines.
They're the people they should be arresting. Like if they're like actual professional agitators going out there and like competing for TikTok likes by like causing damage. If these, I mean, it's presumably easy to track someone down who's doing that, right? Because then they're going to post it on their TikTok. Like, this was me. Look how cool I am.
From what we heard during that particular moment, there was not much of a police presence, at least by the LAPD. So you have this kind of opportunity in that context to do whatever you want. And I don't think that the people probably trying to get the best TikTok out of the situation are the ones that are the most passionate about immigration policy, just to wager a guess.
Don't you think we should weigh the entertainment value against the cost of the vandalism? Right? Like, let's say that vandalism costs $300,000, right? If the total entertainment value, and we can measure that in terms of revenue to ads, if that generated $10 million in ad revenue, come on, the vandalism was good for the economy, right?
You know, you remind me of right now is
such an interesting point.
Watch the X-Men, but there's this parallel dimension run by this guy Mojo, and Mojo's world was like a recurring sort of, it would come up again and again in the X-Men. And what he would do is he would capture all of these X-Men, he would transport them to this dimension and make them fight to the death for ratings. But the whole universe, his reality, was all geared towards getting better ratings. And in a way, what you're saying is kind of like perfect for this current president that we have, who, you know, comes from the world of reality television and has always cared deeply about ratings, which is probably where his instincts were sort of naturally drawing him to this. He knows that this is where the eyeballs are going to be. People care about this. And now you have live political theater. I want to just introduce one. There's a question of immigration. You know, were they really protesting about this thing? Does it really matter? Is it just, you know, entertainment? I have my opinions on that. I think it's sort of like you follow the laws and you don't break them and you don't come here, and we can't have illegal immigration. And if you don't have a border, you don't have a country. And I don't mind seeing the deportations, frankly. But what I think is very interesting is when you have this many immigrants in America, you start to see a new kind of identity form. We see this in Southern California with the Mexican immigrants, where about 50% of that city is now Latino. You have about close to 1 million illegal immigrants in Los Angeles, 1 million in a population of 10 million, 500,000 of whom are Mexican. And so I started wondering, like, when I saw the Mexican flag being waved, in a sense, like, are they even wrong? Like it was sort of this really offensive thing to see, this idea of this is Mexico actually, and this is ours. It's kind of what it reads like. But then it's like, is that not true? Is LA not, in a sense, increasingly a Mexican city inside of America? And that comes with an entire new, I would say, origin myth. So Katy Perry enters the chat. This would have been June 10th, I believe, or the night of June 9th, I think. Katy Perry writes to her I think she has 200 million followers on Instagram. Founded by Mexican settlers in 1781, this was once Mexican land, and the people being targeted today are often descendants of those who have lived here for generations or who came seeking safety, work, and dignity. To me, that's incredible. None of that is true. In 1781, there was no such thing as a Mexican settler because there was no such thing as Mexico. What she's talking about is Spanish. Those were Spanish settlers. There was a mix of mostly sort of Europeans, Spaniards, and also mestizo, which are like a mix of indigenous Central Americans and Spanish, native indigenous Spanish people who had settled in Los Angeles because Spain was a colonial empire. The question I have now as a descendant of conquistadors is like, is West Hollywood mine by sort of blood right. Is that the new leftist position? That's the first question I have. And then the next one I have is what happens to a country with multiple origin myths. But Liv, I don't know if you followed this at all. Did you think it was funny, interesting? For me, this is the most interesting thing about the entire riot, which I should note is escalating. They're sort of growing, and it might be a much bigger thing. I think it probably will be a bigger thing over the weekend. But for now, this is the thing that I find the most fascinating.
I mean, I don't know much about Californian history, Mexican history, and so on, so I can't really comment on that and the accuracy of any of that. I think there is something to be said that if like a sufficient portion of a culture is one way, then they have a claim to that. Now, at the same time, do you get to like basically rename a country or reclaim? It's almost like sequestering a part of a city or something and claiming that it is now under its own law and so on. I mean, civilization currently hinges on that not happening in terms of like the current civilization we all enjoy and live in, and presumably that attracted people to that place in the first place. It was set up in such a way that you can't just suddenly rewrite a bunch of laws and say we now own this or whatever. But I have some sympathy to it. I don't know. I mean, I'm just like right now going through my own kind of weird period of mourning. I'm about to go back to the UK, which is obviously my homeland. And I've been following what's going on there with the immigration crisis, and people I know who live in London who are just like, I don't know my city anymore. Like, I used to walk down Oxford Street and all these classic places, and it had this feel of Britishness. And now it feels, in some ways, like a third world country. And I mean, how do I even describe this without like you get immediately labeled racist and so on? But it's like a majority. When I was in Hyde Park last year, I was walking through it, and I was I'd say maybe 1 in 5 to 1 in 10 people were white British, and everyone else was Muslim. The vast majority of women I walked past were wearing, either a burqa or one of the things, and it was extremely unsettling because it's like, I don't know, it's just a very different culture, and their birth rate is at 3, whereas the British birth rate is at 1.6, so that is declining. The Islamic birth rate is still increasing, is still growing, and there's additional immigration coming in all the time. So where is this going to be in 50 years' time? It's the Britain I knew that I grew up in, the English culture is dying. And I don't know how to feel about it, but I do know how I feel about it. I feel extremely sad, and slightly helpless, frankly. And yeah, it's rough. And at the same time, I do believe in I want to I've tried to be a live and let live person, but at the same time, I care about Western values and I want to fight for them.
Well, the live and live thing is kind of a Western value, and it seems to have been exploited. And there's clearly a cultural encroachment in the UK, and I would say, I've said this before on this podcast, it seems much worse than even what we have in America. Like, you could talk about worse. A city like LA becoming mostly Mexican or something is like, okay, like let's say it was Mexican, suddenly LA is just a Mexican city. Mexico's not that bad.
No, culturally it's very aligned. It's Christian. It's like women are treated pretty equally. It's night and day compared to like the Western Islam.
Yeah, it's like you have people now, I guess, with the idea that Los Angeles was founded by, I don't know, what is it, like the Padres Fundaditos, so I don't know how to say it in Spanish, the founding fathers, whatever that is, that kind of frames them today as like Palestinian, as if Mexicans have been, in occupied territory for the last 200 years, just like sending messages to their family across the border by pigeon and then by wire and then by phone, waiting for their day that they could take over. Even if that all were true, their culture would still be it would still be similar. Like it would still be, you have a common history, despite what they want to tell you. In Europe, you have a common language, in the Latin roots at least, and it's like a sort of understandable alphabet. You have a common faith. A lot of Americans now are Catholic. It's just like very much right there. And you have a shared border and heritage for a long time. But Islam is a different culture completely. It is a non-Western culture. It is, when we used to talk about the East, like that is the shit that was coming and we were scared of. Yeah, it's super different, and probably a problem here as well long term.
I do think in the case of the waving of the Mexican flags, I understand why people took that as basically a sign that people were putting Mexico first in terms of their identity. Maybe it signaled an unwillingness to assimilate here. I don't know if I believe that that's what that means. I found one video of a person who he was waving a Mexican flag. His parents were from Mexico. He himself was born in the US, and he served in the military as a Marine for several years. He said he was proud to serve. I think that for at least some people, the Mexican flag was meant to invoke a sense of visibility or pride in an environment where the expectation might be to hide or be afraid.
I can't. It really makes me so mad. I prefer George's explanation of like, this is literally all just fake. To me it makes me happier. I'm like, okay, but to actually then, the idea that there's any positive reading of it. I had one grandparent growing up. They all died except one, and the one that was alive when I was a kid was she was from Spain. She was the only immigrant out of the four of them. She was a Spanish immigrant. Her family brought her here in the Spanish Civil War. She was 10 years old, and I growing up only knowing her, I did not know what the Spanish flag looked like until I don't know. I was a teenager and I opened a book, maybe younger, probably like 10 or 11. And I went to the library and I was like, curious about my Spanish heritage. And I looked it up and I saw it and I was like, oh, there it is. It was not a part of my reality. My grandma taught me that I was an American. She was an American. She told me one story once about, she had a nephew or something come over from Spain and to stay with her for a while. And she was talking about how great Spain was and how backwards America was and whatnot. She was like, go the fuck home. This is America. If you don't like it, leave. Like, you are an American now. You had to burn the ships when you came over as an immigrant in the 20th century and become a part of the people that were here. I don't want to see your flag. Like, I don't want to see a foreign flag in this country. And I don't want to hear about your Mexican heritage. Like, this does not work. America as a concept will not work unless we come together and have one culture. Like, we have to agree that the most important thing here is that we're all Americans. And if only some of us are doing that and some of us are not, that's going to always be a recipe for conflict. And if none of us are doing it, I don't know how we maintain a country, period. Like, I don't know how that even lasts. Like, we are very quickly entering the world of snow crash, which is kind of going to be where we're going to go in a second, unless anyone has last thoughts on this one, because I want to talk about the burning Waymos and the future of techno-fascism.
Can I ask a follow-up question for you?
Yes.
What I feel like part of why this gets you going is the stakes, like what you think the stakes are. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
It's kind of what I just said. I think that if there is no path towards assimilation into a single American culture, or let's say a dominant American culture with a bunch of subcultures, there always have been subcultures, there always will, but sort of like roughly like a dominant sense of national identity, like what America is, what the sort of ground floor rules are, where the country came from, like a common, not even just a common history. I'm talking like a common understanding of history, like a common belief that like the country began when the founding fathers like built a bunch of shit and set down the Constitution, fought the war and wrote the Constitution. Like, if you don't believe that's what the country is, then we're not a country. Like, the period, like this dissolves, the whole thing ends, which we kind of all think is impossible because it seems crazy to think that America could end or the Western world could end. But like, things have changed forever, for thousands of years. The history has changed. That is the only guaranteed thing, is that things will change. And if things are changing in such a way as we're just a totally fragmented country where it's like you have regions of the country that are basically different, that's bad. Like, that to me is dystopia.
You'll find this in every single manifesto of every racist shooter everywhere. Demographics are destiny. That's true.
Yeah.
Right. So simply, if the birth rate is of the, it's just, you can ask the question of how people get their political opinions, and this Americaism political opinion is inherited through birth. if these people are reproducing at 1 or 2, total fertility rate, then yeah, I mean, demographics are destiny. So either you fix the demographics or you get rid of democracy, right? That's the choice. And like, that's the choice we're going to be faced with.
Well, that's the choice. I don't think that, I don't know. Mexicans,
Convert people.
I don't know.
You're going to convert people. You're going to change their minds.
No. I think that's for sure the case in the UK, because I don't really see a lot of love for democracy across the Muslim world. I think in America, it might last a little longer. Like, I don't know. This is getting into crazy territory, but I mean, the amount of immigration we've seen is crazy. Like, the rapid shift of culture is pretty crazy. To see, fires in Los Angeles and people waving foreign flags and people defending that is, to me, quite crazy. And it brings me really to the question of this burning Waymo, for the 5 burning Waymos, but what is increasingly like this interesting symbol of so many things, the future of technology. It's a symbol in the tech industry, I would say, the self-driving car. It's a symbol of class rage and warfare that is bipartisan. You see people on both the left and the right who see this as a really dangerous thing, the idea of a self-driving car, a truck. In the case of, there was an interview with Tucker Carlson, or a debate between Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro, where Tucker Carlson was like, of course I want to ban self-driving trucks. Like, why would I not? And in this case, there's the immigrant sort of dynamic of that, whatever that is. Blake just wrote a piece on that, and I'm gonna let you go off in a second. But I would say it's interesting that has become sort of the mascot of the LA riots, is the burning Waymo, because a future where we are not a single culture, which is, we all seem sort of, I think, weirdly in agreement that seems to be where this is headed. The future that I see is a sort of South African future, a future where it's, if you don't trust your neighbors, you're looking at a future of more personal security. You're looking at a future of gated communities. You're looking at a future of any kind of technology that helps insulate you from other people. So what is the self-driving car, the Waymo, but like a bubble that protects you from everybody else? You're not even talking to a driver anymore. And that is suddenly now looking like a world of sort of parallel societies within parallels. Like, it's a technological it is a technological solution that creates parallel societies within a world that's already fragmented culturally. So another world. So it's like parallels within parallels. I think that kind of is possibly the future. It's like, are we entering a world of gated communities and armed Waymos, basically, is what I'm asking.
The best way to predict the future is to look at the past and extrapolate. So if you burn 2 Waymos, is this going to affect Waymo as a company? How many Waymos would you have to burn? 5 Waymos. Okay. So how many Waymos would you have to burn to impact Waymo, right? That's the question. And that's the question these protesters should be asking. If any of you guys are watching, you won. Waymo's going to see it burn to be like, I'm done.
How do you not understand? So, George, this is a meme. A meme was just created. 1 burning Waymo with people happily waving flags in front of it now makes the entire fleet unsafe. You're going to see burning Waymos for the next 10 years. You're going to see this.
Well, I mean, like, if I was trying to deploy, figure out which city am I deploying Waymo next to, I'm being like, well, which is the most politically neutral city, or which city doesn't have a left-leaning population, because that seems to be who the last riots, the last group of people who burnt them down. It's definitely going to be affecting their policy. I'd love to be a fly on the wall in the meetings right now of deciding like where, because you saw the footage of them driving all the Waymos out of LA. So they're taking them somewhere else. They're like, well, fuck it, we don't want them in LA anymore. Where are they going to take them? I mean, I could see a market for them opening up in like Middle America, actually, where if they become a political symbol of like leftist destruction, then maybe Middle America is like, we want them, actually. It's real hard to get around. I want them, like, I want one on my farm taking me from A to B. Who knows? I'm sure there'll be a market opportunity open up, but no, I think it absolutely affects.
Waymos.
Exactly.
And they were even white. They were white. They are white.
I try not to have sympathy for robots, but I actually felt like a deep sadness for them.
I want to talk about that in a second, but Blake, I know you have a point, and then I want to talk about the anthropomorphic Waymo thing that's happening.
Well, it's interesting. This isn't the first time that Waymos have been set on fire. It happened in February in San Francisco. It was only 1 car, I believe, but the car was just navigating a celebration of the Lunar New Year or something, and members of the crowd spontaneously decided to destroy it. There was graffiti bashed in the windows, threw in a firework. Maybe they didn't know that was lighted on fire. Anyway, it totally burned to the ground. And at the time, Waymos said in statements to the press, the car was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. This is kind of a one-off thing. But that's clearly not the case. They've offered similar language actually in coverage of the LA riots. So maybe they understand more than they're sharing, but I think you're totally right. Waymos become something that's way beyond Waymo. These cars are not just at the wrong place at the wrong time.
They're being hunted.
This is as we are in the beginning of the transition period between where the majority of vehicles on the road are human driven to where the majority will be self-driven. At some point we will, go through that flippening, right? But because we're in the early stages, they are still a novelty. And if you have a group of agitators looking to cause mayhem who are probably in part, I think there's probably a little bit of just like the fact that they went for that as a thing to damage, although maybe at the same time, this is to George's point, we're just being shown the Waymos. That's the most interesting thing, right? That for the algorithm to boost. Like there was a bunch of like mom and pop stores that were burned down, Foot Locker, all of these like stores.
I saw a guy getting fingers blown off, which I was surprised.
Like horrible shit. And like all these stores completely wrecked, people who now have lost their livelihoods and so on. We don't hear about that because it's not sensational. And so it's we're focusing on the Waymo because, as George pointed out, that's what the algorithm wants us to. It is the most objectively interesting because it's a novel thing, it's a novel technology. It sets off some kind of weird protectionism, maybe, I don't know. But I think we're just going to trend towards self-driving cars anyway, and they're soon not going to be novel anymore, and so they're not going to be the thing that's being picked on.
Yeah, but for now, I mean, first of all, interesting that the computer would want us to focus on violence against computers. And I'll just set that aside for a second, something to think about at night. But for now, they certainly represent something. Like it seems like, what does Waymo mean? It has this interesting, why is it's, you think it's just novelty, but it reminds me of the Google bus protesters like 10 or 15 years ago in tech, when you would have these commuter buses that were stopped by angry mobs of people, and they would lump it together with all sorts of stupid shit like housing and things like this. But they just were mad about it. It was a symbol of wealth. It was a symbol of power. The Waymo is now also a symbol of the tech bro, who is himself a symbol of a political power because of the sort of like Elon Musk and Donald Trump alliance. Now, what does Elon Musk have to do with Waymo? Nothing. But what is the average crazy person in LA with a flamethrower know about that? Like, I don't think he sees a distinction between Google and Elon Musk, even though they probably hate each other.
Can I add a little bit of a wrinkle? Just that we interviewed this citizen journalist guy, Cam Higbee, who was there, and a couple of others actually. And it seemed like part of what happened is other cars with real human drivers were avoiding the area entirely because they saw a bunch of chaos and knew better. I do think part of what happened is that the cars were ordered on the app because there weren't other cars around to burn. And in that sense, going back to this point about chaos and opportunists, Mike, you've talked in the past about, are people looking for an excuse to be violent? And I do think that the Waymo represented that. We heard that various things were shouted as the Waymos were being burned, including "fuck Waymo," and also the company can just file an insurance claim. So there's this idea of there's no owner, or the owners don't matter, the owner's so big that it doesn't matter, and so on. So I feel like it's a lot of things at once. It's the kind of opposition to the man and tech in the way you're saying. We know that just from the graffiti that was plastered all over the Waymos. But it's also this kind of animalistic tension, looking for a great TikTok, no other cars are around.
That's obviously, we're sort of always like one crisis away from going primitive again, which we all saw in 2020, like how quick people were to just descend into the like, I'm going to break something. I'm going to steal something. It's me against the world. Civilization takes a lot of energy to maintain, and not just like physically, but psychically. The idea of civilization collapses when things get a little bit wild and spooky. And that's what we saw to a certain extent. There are people who are sort of waiting to prey on these moments, I think. And you can kind of feel, I was watching a bunch of clips this morning, the protests / riots. I think you can clearly just call them riots. There were people in Portland last night trying to light a federal building on fire. Like that is not a protest. Like that, I mean, it's a kind of protest, but it's like that qualifies as riot to me personally. We're seeing this shit now. It's like Portland. I saw similar mobs in Seattle lighting shit on fire outside of the federal building and trying to block it, setting up tents. Emaciated, sort of drug addict looking guy shouting Allah Akbar. It's like New York City, where they're really not fucking around in New York. Like they are arresting people left and right, and they're saying like, we're not doing that this year. They want it. They want that 2020 shit. And you could see this sort of unnatural kind of like trying to force the like BLM language into the immigration thing, which is just inherently so not a good fit. Like Black Americans frustrated about Black issues, however you feel about them, they're black, but they're American. Like they are more American, or at least longer than most of us. Like we're talking about people who have descended from Americans 400 years ago. And that issue is just like so different than someone who just got here and is now angry about something, which the average person, including the average Black person, does not give a shit about, as we saw in Chicago during the Biden-Trump election, where this like constantly came up, this idea of, immigration as an issue that actually brought Black Americans closer to the right. So I don't know. I think that's not going to work, but you can just sort of feel people really wanting that. And I think that is because there's like a knee-jerk sort of desire to excuse violence. They want to break stuff.
There's just like agents of chaos.
Yeah. Getting back to the question about just like what to do about the Waymos, I really hope we don't resort to having to arm the Waymos like you suggested, Solana, because I remember like doing like trips to Mexico as a kid, and you'd see like a military truck drive by with like dudes carrying AK-47s in the back. And it was just like a reminder of like, oh, I'm in a third world country now. And I would hate to feel that feeling in like Santa Monica. So hopefully we can find a solution that's not that.
The police will rob you. That's crazy. That is straight up like, I know multiple people who have been robbed by the police in what is the Yucatan area. So it's like Cancun down to Tulum. And that's one of the better parts of the whole country. So they have to bring in the military with masks because they don't want the cartels to know who they are, because the cartels will go and find their family and kill them. Like it is it's a different place. But on the question of arming the Waymos, I mean, is there a path here? How hard would that be to do? What does that look like?
What about those guns that blow bubbles?
No. Rubber bullets, at least. George, how do we get there?
The simpler thing to think about is just to ask what's happened in situations like this before. I think Detroit is a good example. So people think it's the auto industry collapse that wrecked Detroit. It was actually 2 race riots. After the second one, all the people with money were just like, I'm done with this, you guys. So I think the same thing will happen here. I think if there's a city that shows persistent opposition to the Waymos will go somewhere else.
Like an actual straight up, we are really talking about a white flight right now.
Yeah, and you just have to talk about the economics of arming the Waymos. Is it really worth it to build armed robots to get $7.86 for a ride in LA? Probably not.
But what happens when LA collapses? If we're talking about a world in which LA is so violent that the Waymos have to straight up leave, that implies a lot of other things about LA to me that says that city's not going to last. And then all of those people are going to flood the surrounding areas. Like, aren't we going to have to arm the Waymos at some point?
I'm moving to Asia. No. I don't know. I think this is all cooked.
Oh, man. Well, why is Asia safer?
Civilization only lasts so long, and then you run out of that thymos, and you just gotta surf to the next wave. Try to cling on to the old wave, or you can move on.
The most realistic solution to me for Waymo maybe looks like monitoring unrest and just shutting down the app or the service when there's protests, because now we can pretty much bank on protests devolving into violent chaos targeting. Well, we'll see. I personally think that Waymos will continue to be targeted in other cities that the protests are moving to.
If I'm a Waymo, where do I want to be? I want to be in the place I can pull in the most money. If I got to spend extra on security or monitoring, you got to factor that into your bottom line. Waymos are pure agents of capitalism.
Well, in South Africa, if you armed the Waymo, you would be able to command a lot more capital. It's not safe, right? So maybe
if
that's
the whole
the incentive.
country falls apart, sure.
Well, I think that it might. That was my original thesis. Like, it seems to me that the country's unwinding, and if that's the case, and the future is gated, then there is a lot of money to be made. I don't think that it's just going to end like we all descend into just like primitive times. I think it's like the rule of law sort of collapses. You can no longer count on the police to protect you. And once people really believe, even if it's not even true, if people just truly believe that the police can't protect you, then suddenly there is a huge economic incentive to create something that seems very safe.
Right. You're already seeing private firefighting, right? And people building that, and
yes,
gated communities getting security, and they'll be beefing them up. And unfortunately, it seems like that's the trend.
And I'll be paying 1/5 of the price for a ride in Asia, because in Asia you don't need that stuff. Sure,
yeah,
you can spend on all this security. Well, yeah, you just got to keep going to where civilization still exists. Maybe it's Mars, maybe it's Jupiter. I'll figure it out.
Where in Asia?
Hong Kong.
Are you serious?
What?
Yep, absolutely.
I guess I mean, you're going to be fine until there's a famine in China, and then you're getting fucking cannibalized. It'll be chaos.
I trust the leadership of Xi Jinping for there not to be a famine in China.
Oh my god! Did we accidentally bring a spy onto the pod?
I think you might have. I mean, he's not a very good one because he's not subtle.
Yeah, he's like wearing a Xi Jinping shirt or something.
I'm just saying. Who do you trust more? Who do you trust more?
I guess I do want to back up for a second and just wonder. I mean, this is a kind of new idea for me that I've been thinking a lot about. Am I off base possibly? Like, are things maybe just way better than they seem? Is it just like we're entering some growing pains and actually things are going to kind of normalize and there's not going to be an increase of violence? And
if the wealth gap is so apparent in America, and also the perception of it is amplified through things like social media. And I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised if there is some kind of, prior to like complete civilizational breakdown, there will be some kind of attempt of like, let's shut down social media or something like that. Because, I'm very agnostic on whether social media is a net benefit or net harm. I'm currently leaning more net harm. But one of the ways you stop a meme from spreading is to stop the medium through which it spreads. And I would not be surprised if at some point the Trump government takes like really strong actions to stop when a particularly vicious meme arises or like some kind of violence is spreading.
Has this ever happened in the past? Have we ever shut down a new medium of communication because the ruling class didn't like what people were saying on it?
I'm sure it's happened in some way, like the radio, radio waves, I guess, are kind of hard to shut down, but I mean...
There's always a seeking of control of these things.
Yeah. I mean, North Korea's done it, right?
Well, we could live in North Korea. Yeah, it's not where I'm moving, but...
Oh, God.
Not that Asian country.
My point is, if you like, sure, I'm sure the Roman Catholics wanted to shut down the printing press so that they couldn't keep spreading the Bibles or whatever, but you didn't shut it down, right? I'm sure people have wanted to shut down radio, television, all historically, and maybe locally, but globally, trend only goes one way.
I feel like you're right, Solana, that the gated vibes will continue to worsen. We've already, this is already true in our online existence. People are already living in gated communities online. They don't intake a shred of information from other ideologies, from other pockets of ideologies, from people who don't look, sound, act like them, want what they want. So maybe part of what's happening now is that's just translating more to the physical reality, or will.
I love that. The internet has transitioned from a high trust society to a low trust society, and that's why it sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, we have
Yes.
to. How do we protect reality from turning into that? How do we protect America?
Well, I think
Is
that
it-
is reality
Arm
now.
the Waymos.
But I thought this. So on the we're talking about blue sky. Let's be honest. And then I think to us also considerable degree Twitter. Those are places where people don't even make that choice anymore. They're sort of algorithmically quarantined based on
Right.
their interests, which is really wild and a very just obvious tell into how we react in these environments. But then in the real world, like I was watching, there have been a whole string of people online talking about, not online, I'm sorry, a whole string of people on CNN, MSNBC, talking about the founding of Los Angeles as Mexican and really playing into this idea that Mexicans are not illegal immigrants. In fact, they're not even immigrants. The border crossed them is what they're saying. This is historically not true. You had like 75,000 mostly Spaniards back when this happened. They became American citizens and have been for 200 years. But that idea being just not, it's not just crazy people online or dumb celebrities with 200 million followers. It is like a new, I don't know how to bridge that gap. That is like they're getting their information online. They're then taking it to the real world and they're going to be voting on it. Like, I don't think that you're going to see a major Democratic president, a presidential candidate, certainly not a candidate for governor in something like California who has a shot at winning, go after that idea and be like, no, that's not really true. That's just, we're different people now. And we're
Like,
kind
what's AOC saying about it? Because I feel like she's kind of, to me, she's
AOC
like
has previously said, AOC has previously talked about the idea that Mexicans were actually indigenous Americans. And that was maybe that was the beginning of the meme. I'm not sure. It wasn't quite in this construction. She didn't go all the way in on the LA founding story, but she's already kind of hinted at that, which is kind of nuts because we have all of these baked in cultural and political advantages for Native Americans in this country that are really for like the Apache and shit. We have very small population, but the country is non-trivially Latino now. And Latinos, generally speaking, are a mix of like European and indigenous American ancestry. So if you suddenly have now a group of 20% of Americans even who think they have some kind of indigenous claim to the country and they have systemic advantages to apply for, and the Democrats are not willing to challenge that in any way, that's another recipe for disaster. That is like really, really, really bad. I think that's probably the most interesting thing about all this, again, for me, is how the Mexican identity is changing in America to become more historically American. Like as they become more dominant in American politics, their sense of self has changed considerably, and in a way that's going to affect, I think, the whole country.
I mean, you look at this and you have several choices, but it has to be one of these things. You can sit here and say, oh, I'm technically correct, but this doesn't matter. Either we change these people's minds, we kick these people out, or we end democracy. And it has to be one of those three things.
Well, why do we have to end democracy? Unpack that one a little bit more. Why can't we just persist in the state of like politicians appealing to different groups completely? You have Gavin Newsom talking about whatever bullshit in Spanish as well as English. Like, why can't it just kind of persist like that?
Well, it could, but again, demographics are destiny, right? Are these numbers going up, or are these numbers? How are the demographics changing?
Well, but Mexico has a democracy. It's a shitty one, but it is a democracy. It's not like they're, inherently anti-democratic.
No, but you're saying some stuff like, well, there's a real truth to how California was founded, and it wasn't actually historically Mexico. And whether that's true or not,
I think we're going to totally disagree, but that doesn't have anything to do with dissolving democracy. Like, I think that probably democracy will persist in a state where people are just have nothing in common, and so every election is.
So what if the majority of the voters say, nope, actually California historically was Mexico or whatever? What are you going to do about that?
Well, what does that mean other than like all that means is like that's like a less pleasant existence for me, but I don't think it ends it probably in some way. It seems not healthy for democracy to have a bunch of people voting democratically who don't agree that the other has a claim to exist. It's funny because they're kind of trying to say this is like Palestine. That is the course that we're on. We're on a course to this world where like it doesn't work. Like both sides are not just disagreeing politically. They don't agree that the other has a right to exist. And I think to be clear, I think we're very far away from that right now. I think we're quite far away from a Israel-Palestine thing, but the only solution to the Israel-Palestine fate is some kind of monoculture, and I don't know how you do that in the age of the internet.
Okay, so you're going to change these people's minds. The solution to Israel-Palestine is going to change their minds?
No, that's fucked. I don't know. I'm not trying to solve.
It's the same problem.
I have no idea. Yeah, zero idea about the Middle East.
Well, the interesting thing as well, though, is you mentioned it's like MSNBC, CNN, and so on that are like pumping out this meme, right, and getting behind it. Why? That's the interesting. Like, why would well, okay, let's not use the word Native Americans, but the current Americans who are, okay, left-leaning, but the establishment want this.
I really think I know this, and it's because they're morally against the deportation, period. Like, it doesn't matter that it's legal. They think it's abhorrent. And it doesn't matter that there are 20 million people. It's like the scale of it doesn't matter to them. They're like, this is just totally wrong. But the law is not on their side and culture is not on their side. The average American is supporting deportation. So what do? I think that you're reaching for things to complicate this, maybe not even rationally, but emotionally, you feel like you need like rhetorical ammunition. And the idea that this is not legitimate, the idea of deportation is not legitimate because these people are actually more American than Americans, is I think it's a powerful idea, and it's a really useful idea. And I think that useful ideas in this, maybe all information ecosystems, but certainly this one where ideas spread rapidly and grow and kind of evolve in real time based on what works and what doesn't. I think that's why this idea is flourishing. And I think it's going to you're going to see it again and again and again. I think we're going to see it this weekend.
And the way it ties in also with like the, what is it, from LA to Gaza, globalize the Intifada, yes. Right? This yes. Coalition.
Mexico to Gaza! Globalize the Intifada!
But the deeper philosophy that's behind that even more, that's coming from the left, is this idea that if you're weak, you are correct. Weak is right. Weak is morally the good guy every time. And that's their simplicity. It's like, are you the underdog? Okay, then you must be the good guy. And that's why this is so fucked. Because it's like, okay, sometimes it's true, but sometimes it's true. They're like actually very independent things. Your relative weakness or strength is independent of whether you're a good or a bad guy. Sometimes it's anti-correlated, but it's like...
In democracy, the majority is right. So we're going to go with that?
Right.
What if the majority...
Right, so that's what it is. It's anti-democracy.
No, but which one's anti-democracy, right? Like, what's the birth rate in Palestine and what's the birth rate in Israel, right? Like these are...
Israel's pretty high. Israel's really high. Israel might be the highest.
For like a modern nation, yeah.
No, sure, I think Israel's higher than Palestine. The Hasidic
it's not. It's definitely not.
Well, but then you just see who wins these things. If you continue democracy, you just have to look at who has higher fertility rate. And then extrapolate out unless something changes.
Well, here's the really messed up thing, though, is you just said it, win. Like, who is going to win? And that means already we have internalized this sense of antagonism within this. This idea is not like, democracy is how the best way for a group of people to figure out just what to do for that group of people. What we're framing it as is like, this is war. This is war between people. And that's really bad. That's like really, really, really unhealthy. And I think it's because we grew up in a relatively stable democracy, we have this idea that it's always going to be relatively stable, and that is just not true. I think that these ideas that are circulating freely, calmly around right now are really radical and a huge departure from where we all came from in like coming up in the 90s, I think, or 2000s for maybe some Riley over here. Like that is an alien concept, really, and not tenable. Like that's not gonna work.
If you're interested in a monoculture, might I suggest Asia?
Yeah, like I mean the China, like the Han Chinese thing. It is true, man. They do, and even Japan. I mean, their answer is just like there will be no other culture. Like very friendly. They're very friendly. Like, oh, tourist, yes. Love Japan. It's time to go now. Here's the door. You will never be Japanese. Out you go. You'll never, ever, ever be Japanese. That's changing a bit, though, because they're a westernized country, and the Western idea is super Anglo, and the Anglos are just, I think, very unique in their this is maybe a really controversial thing to say, but I know that I'm right. The Anglos are uniquely open people. They're like super open to not just immigration, but to exploration, to like culture evolves rapidly, is like a very open, like I said, open culture that I think is
Look what we've let happen to London. Yay.
I feel like some people will listen to this episode and think that we're saying immigrants are bad. Like more immigrants equals democracy ends and the cultural fabric ends, which feels like an inherently dangerous idea to me and centered in a white kind of a vibe.
White, I'm saying you just become who you are. Like, I don't think that America is magic and people just become American in the numbers of like 50 million people march over here. I think that we'll become whatever culture it is. And so I think the UK is becoming more Islamic and I think America is becoming more Latin. And I don't think, is that controversial?
What I'm trying to nail down is why is it bad to change?
I'm extremely pro-immigration, but you have to make money. You have to bring in people who produce more than they consume. Let's get rich. America
they have to be
is an
net
economic
tax
zone.
owners.
Yes, exactly that.
Right.
Forget the culture, monoculture, whatever. Let's just be rich.
And the thing is that unfortunately, illegal immigrants are generally speaking correlated with paying very low. They are the lower end of the tax contributions.
Sounds like we need immigrants who are going to pay a lot of taxes. I like that. Fix the national debt. Love it.
Well, especially as we're talking about autonomous labor, it's kind of crazy. The other crazy thing about the burning Waymos to me is like, in the context of an immigration thing, is we're talking about mostly low-skilled immigrants at a time when low-skilled labor seems endangered. I mean, most labor maybe seems endangered. White-collar labor also seems endangered. So I don't even know. This is why the H-1B thing also kind of blows my mind. We're talking about like expanding H-1B at the exact same moment we're having a conversation about replacing most engineers with AI. And it's like, well, that doesn't make any kind of rational sense. So what are we really saying at that point? Well, why is mass migration, which is what we're talking about here in the millions and millions, tens of millions, literally 20 million illegal alone. We're not even talking about regular immigration in Canada, where close to a third of the population is foreign born. Why is that inherently good? Like what is inherently, like the question of, is it bad or not? Let's just table it. If you don't have an actual reason, for example, I don't need any engineers, so why are we bringing them over here? What is the inherent good of a foreigner coming here and living here, or let's 20 million of them? And I don't think there's an inherent good. And I don't even know that someone would argue that. I think they would feel embarrassed to argue something like that. So I think that a lot of people are sort of dancing around maybe what they want.
Well, I would actually, so the steel man on the other side is like, generally speaking, each human can do shit, right? Humans can build stuff, they can make things, they can, they'll have babies. Humans in general are economic production machines in some way. And so having more humans is generally good. But it depends on whether those humans are fitting into the existing system, in the existing economic system. If they are, and some are more than others, just because of culture or for whatever reason.
I think for progressives, it's not is this better for the country thing. It's a moral issue. People who are hurt seeking asylum, thumbs up. I think for right-leaning people, it's about, is it better for the country?
Yes.
And so they're different.
100% right.
They're different debates. They're coming from a different place.
I see right-wing people being just as moral about this as left-wing people. I think both sides are equally moral and ridiculous.
Yes. No, but Blake's correct. It's that picture of where people focus their empathy. Have you seen that? Where right-wing people generally, their empathy is centered on people like very close to them, and left-wing people tend to externalize the empathy. No, you're saying no.
No. This is one of my biggest bugbears. That fucking heat map. I know the thing is, it's completely misunderstood and taken out of context.
That's correct. So I'm going to go.
But listen, it's so taken out of context. All it shows, those two heat maps, are the outer edges of people's circles of empathy. They're not saying that, if you therefore, you care about plants or animals, that you don't care about your family. It's just saying that your moral sphere of things that you do care about go out further. Typically, liberals have a slightly broader moral sphere than conservatives. Now, it's true that somewhat, like, I do think it's not like perfectly abundant, like your morality. If you care so much about rocks that means, we don't have infinite, but it's because it's absurd to like say, it's like that the way that heat map is done. You should inset it.
Empathy for rocks.
No one is saying that. No, this is the straw man.
You have empathy for Waymo.
I am Chamath. Rocks are below my line.
They're below everyone's line. Don't worry. But the point is, there were right-wing people saying like, "Oh, see, this is why liberals are stupid. They care about rocks." So it's like no one cares about rocks. But that heat map is completely misunderstood. I wrote a long ranty tweet about it. You need to
give Greta Thunberg a second. On a rock.
People have famously cared about rocks.
I will care about it.
You were caring about the Waymos.
I do think that we should. We're running out of time here. We have one more topic. First, an ad read. Matt, for time, I think we're just going to cut to my pre-recorded ad read, which came out really well. Thank you, AdQuick. AdQuick. We love you. Sigh of Angels. You might have seen our Moon Should Be a State billboard on NASDAQ and thought, how'd you pull that off? Simple answer, we have no idea and still don't. We're writers and content creators, not billboard pros. Before AdQuick, pulling something like this off would have been a huge hassle. We didn't have the time to figure out all the logistics. But with AdQuick, we just sent them the design and they took care of everything while we focused on what we do best. Shitposting. IRL ads are unskippable, shareable, and impossible to ignore. Our billboard reached 1.5 million people. Elon even retweeted it, proving that nothing matches the real-world impact of outdoor advertising. Also, if you're busy, and you are, they just launched AdQuick Go, a fully self-serve tool for fast-moving teams. No calls, no back and forth, just drop in your creative and go live in minutes. If your messages deserve more than just another scroll-by post, make it larger than life with AdQuick. Sigh of Angels. Thank you, AdQuick. We got to move. We can come back to this topic. We can draw on it, whatever you want. But I do want to kind of introduce a new topic. It's going to be, for time, our final topic. Greta Watch. Riley, haven't heard from you in a second. Sorry, we all talk a lot. No one more than me. Take it away.
Yeah, this is related to our discussion about the Intifada and colonialism and all that stuff. So, Greta Thunberg, her grand voyage came to an end in an anticlimactic fashion. The Israeli Navy intercepted her flotilla, which is a word I hope we start saying more. Flotilla is fun. In the Mediterranean on Monday. They have since sent her back to Sweden via airplane. There's no word yet on the carbon impact of that flight. But Greta, in a viral video, she claimed that she was actually kidnapped by the Israeli Navy. Which is what led to her nautical protests coming to an end. The Israel Foreign Ministry, for their part, said that all the passengers of they called it a selfie yacht, are safe and unharmed. They were provided with sandwiches and water. The show is over. You had people on X pointing out that Greta might be the first kidnapping victim in history where her kidnapper's only demand is that she leave. And Trump described her predicament as only he can. The president said, she's a strange person. She's a young, angry person.
Go ahead, do you have a message for Greta Thunberg? And did she come up on your call with the prime minister today?
Well, she's a strange person. She's a young, angry person. I don't know if it's real anger. It's hard to believe, actually. But I saw what happened. She's certainly different. Anger management. I think she has to go to an anger management class. That's my primary recommendation for her.
That's the latest in our Greta saga.
That's my primary recommendation for her.
Listen, she looked angry on the plane, and I don't think she was angry because she was being deported from Israel. I think she's being flown back at exactly the same time as the LA riots. And so it was a selfie bow. This is what Greta does. She's an activist. She's pretending to be a Palestinian freedom fighter on her way to Israel, where she was going to pretend to be a victim of Israeli oppression or violence or brutality. And she kind of did weakly attempt these things while it was happening, but no one cared because the Americans were putting on a show. And that is just what Americans are going to do. Our most sociopathic, deranged lunatics, even, maybe especially, are way better at putting on a show than Greta Thunberg. And I think she was sitting there just I didn't get attention. I did all this. I went on this fucking voyage and I got no attention. It was just completely drowned out in the news. Other than, little bits came up, and of course we were watching. I'm a great fan of hers.
Has she considered burning Waymos?
Give her a second. Give her a second. I really
I'd love
think
to
it's
see the mental gymnastics for that. You know, how she carbon offsets that. Can we just talk about the absolute unfathomable psychopathy that it takes to go and call your there was someone made like some social media post about how she like they have been this list of people on this boat have been kidnapped by the state of Israel and are being held as hostages. Release the hostages. The psychopathy to do that when they are literally like there have been hundreds of people who were stolen, kidnapped, tortured, in many cases murdered, little babies murdered. And we know they were like the Bibas, I don't know how you pronounce their last names, but the Bibas family, and they had like babies, were taken as hostages and killed during this war in a way that started this war. And she has the gall to go and say, I'm the kidnap, I'm a victim. Like, it makes my skin crawl.
But let's say, because from her perspective, or someone who's maybe like a kind of Palestine person, they're not going to hear that and be like, whatever, they're like war criminals, blah, 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 blah. But you could also frame that in the exact similar way, I would say, by invoking the Palestinian war hostages. They're now like prisoners on the Israel side. So if you really believe that they're out there freedom fighting, as she ostensibly does, she's now equating what she's going through with what these people are going through. And it's just obviously not the case. Like, I mean, it's kind of annoying to have to sit here and even be like, no, it's not true, because it's ridiculous. The idea that she's got on a sailboat and she sailed into a war zone that was being blockaded by Israel. And then the government said, we're going to stop you if you come. And she came anyway, and they stopped her at the end. Like, what are we talking about here?
Do you know Bridget Fatasi?
Yeah, of course. She was just on the pod last week.
Yeah, she was talking about, she made an amazing reel about how maybe Greta just really likes sailing. It's just her thing. She just wants to sail.
I mean, it's very clear that she does. It is a part of her identity, as all rich white girls. You know, it's like eventually they find that sailboat and they can't help but take a selfie on it.
To her credit, at least, you know, she wasn't like most of these protesters where the activism is done on like TikTok and like Blue Sky. At least she was about that life and was like, I'm going to go within a mile of these rockets. So
yeah, I think it'll get crazier though too, because my sister was a behavior therapist, and for kids with autism, and the way that works is you identify a behavior, classically presenting autism, not the fake kind of quirky girl autism, but like real autism, when you are nonverbal, or in some cases, not all, obviously most are not, but like maybe you're younger, you're nonverbal, or you have a behavior, like for example, you go to the bathroom in the house or something. So she'll identify the behavior, whatever it is, it's problematic. And then she creates a plan of positive reinforcement for the family to sort of positively reinforce the behavior that's not that bad behavior. And that's the sort of new in vogue way to handle behavior in the world of autism. So what happens eventually is when you start ignoring what you have to do, you reward good behavior and you ignore the bad behavior. So say a kid goes to the bathroom in the house, rather than being like, Dustin, no, that's bad. You have to just literally pretend you don't see it. And at first it's confusing to the kid. And then a few attempts in, when he's not getting any attention for doing it, rather than end the behavior, he will increase it. He'll do like much, much, much more. He'll start going crazy. He'll go to the bathroom all over the house. He'll start screaming. He'll throw a temper tantrum. And it becomes much harder to ignore, but you have to. And if you successfully ignore that final burst, the behavior ends, and that's called behavior extinction. And Greta, I feel like the next path for her has to be escalation. Like as the attention goes down, the behavior will have to get crazier. We do see this with our activists all over the place, and she's gotten a lot of attention her whole life. And once that faucet turns off, it's like, I really would not be surprised if she ends up becoming a domestic terrorist. I sort of see that in her eyes. I really do think that's where this story ends.
Solana, are you saying that it's now like you basically what you're saying is you should no longer pay attention to Greta, is what I'm hearing you say?
I'm supposed to. But there's also a question of whether I'm capable of that. And personally, that's going to be hard.
What if we stop paying attention to the news entirely? What if we stop paying attention to the news entirely? Just turn the news off. It all would stop.
Yeah.
This whole thing would stop. if you really want to
But it's
fix
in all my
of
group
this,
chats.
but if you really want to fix all this, if we really wanted to fix what
Go
was
live in a
wrong
cave.
in Western society, we'd turn it off.
Fine. Let's double click. How do you do that? How do you turn the news off? How is it possible?
Stop talking about it. Morgan Freeman.
No. You're talking about a broad social, like if you could hack every person's brain in the world and then just convince them not to care.
Change
That's not the world
starts
we
at
live
home.
in. So what you're actually talking about.
Change starts at home.
Give me an actual way to do it. It's not going to happen. Just you ignoring it does not end the news. It ends the news for you personally. So are you talking about like cutting the internet off? Are you talking about jailing the journalists? I mean, I'm listening.
I'm talking about telling your friends, and that's what I'm doing right here, to ignore the news. It's all noise. It's all fake. Turn it off. Stop paying attention to it. Stop giving it space in your mind.
Can I ask, George, when did you start being news celibate?
A news cell.
Gamergate?
How long ago was that?
That was like 10 plus years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So has there been a moment in those 10 years where, I mean, how do you know what to do?
How do you know
January
anything?
6th? Like, how do you
George,
navigate?
he's not, come on, George. You know about the news. You know about topics. You're not completely a news cell.
Unfortunately, some people tell me these things and I'm like, why?
But you're on Twitter. You're active. How do you not see it? Like, do you have some kind of block on your timeline so that when you go on and post, you don't see anything?
I'm a recovering Twitter addict. There's actually nothing on. There's nothing on my Twitter now. I'm a recovering Twitter addict.
How?
I have a problem.
Tell me, because I'm a fully in the addiction Twitter addict.
Oh, yeah.
How do I stop it?
Anyone who mentions anything news related, mute. All my Twitter is machine learning and.
Well, that brings me back to my original question, which you've refused to answer, which is how do we arm the Waymos?
We have to ask if it's profitable.
I'm telling you it's profitable. Like I think it's profitable in South Africa already. Like armored transit has to already be more profitable than you're traveling around with bodyguards, right? So like if you can create a simpler, cheaper solution to that, I think there's already a market for it.
Well, why don't we start by putting a guy in the Waymo, but he doesn't drive. He just holds an AK.
That's cheaper for now, but that's, what is that, $200,000 a year?
Well, then we'll use an Optimus. Then we'll use an Optimus to hold the AK. Or how about a Unitree H1? We'll buy him from China, give him an AK, and put him in the Waymo. Okay?
Yeah, the new robot. Well, that's a whole other topic.
Let's not go down this path. I think it's a can of worms we don't need. We're literally just building the robot army. Like, I know you guys are generally skeptics on the idea of a out of control AI, but I'm just saying, hypothetically speaking, if you build a robot army and the 0.001% chance that you do have a misaligned superintelligence that a lot of people are trying to build anyway, you've given it everything it fucking needs.
Forget misaligned. I bought 2 Unitree dogs from China and put them right here in this office. China's going to invade America and we're going to pay for it.
You're going to pay for it, apparently.
He's not buying the robots, right? Are you going to buy an expensive American robot or a low-cost Chinese robot? Do you want a $75,000 Boston Dynamics dog or a $2,000 Unitree dog?
Are they listening to this conversation right now?
All you're really doing is making an argument in favor of tariffs. Like, obviously, there should be 7,000% tariffs on Chinese robots.
No, the tariffs are ridiculous.
There's zero reason to be allowing the import of killer Chinese robots. Like, there's not one good reason.
Why don't we mass immigration everybody who can make those robots and set up factories right here? Why don't we have an 18 million person
we don't
Chinese
have to
city
do that.
right here in
All we
America?
have to do 7,000% tariffs and massive government subsidies.
Yeah, I'm out of here.
And then Peace out.
Enjoy your economically protected shithole.
Okay, well, you're moving literally to China. You just said that you were moving to Hong Kong.
You can experience tariffs today. Move to Brazil.
I think we need to go easy on George since he doesn't really know anything about the news.
He doesn't know the news, but he better start learning Mandarin. And I'm going to check back in maybe a few months. I want to see how far along you are. My friends, it has been absolutely real. That's George Hotz and Liv Boeree back in the chat. Thank you guys both for coming. Riley, Blake, you had no choice but to be here. Thank you anyway. Love you all. Touch grass this weekend. Do not go riot. It's been real.